So yeah, concerning Alan and why I posted, I thought I know that she'd have, she once upon a time had me compose or put together and edit video clips to be used in the ministry to spur on thought. And there was never any one way to look at um, inter- interpretation. It's very early days. This has been before creative arts were visually pursued as school electives, but um, that's separate from a separate category. I acknowledge from what theology is said on the inside of a church to be about, which is truth, the truth about God, you know, and so problems were encountered there because I went back to crediting, well, a combination of Shakespeare and Manson for saying, be true to yourself, because Alan seems to have borne out some corruption against the ethic. But when I was proud of her the most was when she had stood up to Gary, and this was in front of the congregate, and Gary had said, there was something about the church's routine that was contrary to the church's teachings on Jesus' teachings on prayer, and that was the endorsement of public prayer. I've talked about how it's so many vulgarities stem from this view that he was thought to have died for you. Alan, he was one to have gone around saying that, oh, it was her second sentence as in a paragraph whereby she tries to introduce you to Jesus. She's like, this motherfucker died for you. But this teaching, when you pray, go and be alone. Do not stand as they do in the synagogues, boasting aloud in order to gain the attention of men. And you could even watch the church leader if you did the Asian stealth mode where you're praying but you're going. And in Asian stealth mode, you can detect if the leader of a church is even going around inspecting to see who is praying in the congregation and who is not. But either way, once Asian stealth mode has detected that assessment is being made, you know that the preacher is, despite being fully aware on Jesus' teachings concerning how prayer is to be practiced correctly, a traitor against Jesus' teachings. Now, to my understanding, Gary Bradford is now a Muslim. But anyway, back then, so why are you teaching us to disobey directly the teachings of this Lord of ours? What is it you want us to admire about him? His six pack. So what she meant by be true to yourself always, I was trying to work out what's truth to you. It's not the Bible. It's not teachings in the Bible. But I admired that she had stepped up to Gary Bradford. I knew I'd have an altercation with him, and for me it was the tipping point. I said, I'm not going to teach in your ministry ever again. I had encountered the post-betrayal for monetary gain Gospel of Matthew account of Judas's, shortly followed thereafter suicidal, hanging out of guilt for having returned the money gained for betraying Jesus to the treasury, insisting they take it back on the basis that it's blood money, and then hanging himself. Verses in the book of Acts, the same amount of money is used for the purchase of a field known as Akeldama, the field of blood, and that while ploughing at Akeldama, the field of blood, Judas trips, falling headlong and at first, essentially, and his bowels gush out. Now, he couldn't hung himself by the feet. Not a great many suicides in the Bronze Age took flight, if you will, by virtue of the hangee hanging himself by his feet. You also have your two different types of death. So if you look up a knobhead called Ken Ham, he has a creationist museum in Kentucky, and he felt the calling of God calling him out of Australia to go to America, where he could better do God's work. And he's gone instead to a region of Kentucky where couldn't be a bigger man for more medical health graduates, and he's there building the fucking sequel to Noah's Ark. The only good fact to come out of Ken Ham's mouth, he's got volumes 1 and 2 of called Demolishing Supposed Bible Contradictions. And so one that he addresses is actually the contradictory death of Judas Iscariot. And he just says, imagine that you had two different perspectives, but they arrived at the scene like one like 10 minutes later after the other one. Then they're going to give slightly different accounts, aren't they? So, well, hang on, no, you have one is you've got a twofold. You've got coverage over two sets of contradictory facts. You've got that in guilt, Judas would not accept the money paid for betraying Jesus, but he called it blood money as a basis for handing it back to the treasury. And then you've got that he used the money to purchase a field, the field of blood. So that's not one journalist covering the same event. One of them happened or none of them happened in that event. And that's the law of contradiction holding steady. And the other one is the nature of his death was if he trips while tending to his field and is said to have fallen headlong in such a way as it's an implied accidental death. In other words, he's working on the field, goes, fuck, I've fallen over, fuck, and now I'm dead. Whereas that contradicts the means of death against Matthew's hanging out of suicidal guilt, committing suicide by hanging out of traitor's guilt. So, so with contradiction on those two fronts, Mr. Ham does nothing to reconcile it. His books are proof that he probably was trying to get a message out to Australians, and everyone said, "Fuck off!" Like, if someone feels a God has called them to another region of the world, and it happens to be Kentucky, where they've got the most rancid, southerner. There's Borat researching the South because of how many don't get basic cable and wouldn't recognize him as Ali G or Borat or Bruno. You've got Ken Ham getting called to the same locale. and just to build a holy land and fucking build Noah's Ark and publish these books on contradictions that don't work and that don't resolve contradictions. What I think was contradictory was that anybody here in Australia thought he had an ounce of sense to his claim. And so he went, well, fine, I'll locate a region of the world that does and make a bunch of money, but that's not a business strategy. His arguments fall back. Bill Maher kind of pulls him up, going, well, not over 97% of the National Academy of Sciences comprised by the atheistic and the agnostic. How do you respond to that, Mr. Ken Ham? And Ken Ham turns back and says, well, they're sinners in the eyes of God. How do you report no better, Mr. Maher? Are you God? Are you God, Mr. Maher? And Bill Maher goes, no. And that response leaves Ken Ham thinking, shabam, like, what a fucking argument we just won. It's very much like these AFP with going, they constantly reframe the issue, whether it's done on purpose or whether it's closed-mindedness. They go, and what I'm beginning to wonder is that, if they're privately owned, but being told to push a religious agenda in full view that it's violating the Religious Discrimination Act, they'd be pushing a religion that's a distraction or a diversion from the religion held by whoever they're accountable to. That way, when they violate the Religious Discrimination Act by a particular agenda, the crime's never going to be one in which complicity could ever be supposed to subsist between the land rights owners and the AFP as the offending party. It would also be a religion thought to be superior than the religion given to the AFP to give to us. So, once again, pointing back to Freemasonry. But yeah. So Alan, you talk about being true to yourself, be true to yourself always. She had taken her stand and said to call what she could have called Gary Bradford out on. Well, you're teaching us to pray against how Jesus taught us to pray, but to Jesus. So why, if that's your formula, like, shouldn't we expect him to shut up? And maybe that was Gary's trick at the time, was that, he wanted those who had remembered Jesus' teachings on how to pray to kind of go, well, no way will we be getting a prayer response at this uniting church gathering because we've talked in public to be heard by other men. So, yeah, my locking of horns occurred when I said, look, how did Judas die? A third account exists that's not in the biblical canon where Judas, it's supposed to be a number of years after this betrayal. The moral of the story, either way you go, is that this betrayal cost Judas his guard against making a fatal accident, or his conscience, or his, his ripped six-pack and skills with the ladies. Because in the third type of death, he is mowed down by a chariot while trying to pass through a gateway opening. And he's also ridden with sickness. Pus and maggots are said to have crawling from wounds and out of his body, and he's truly repulsive. So the common moral is that, well, he betrayed Jesus and he got fucked with. However, the teachings of Gary Bradford were now, now, now that I've taught you how Jesus taught his followers to pray, I'm going to have you all pray in public and betray Jesus right in front of all of you. So, so that was Gary, and then Gary, would you believe it or not, is soon to be up on grabbing the mic talking about his diet, how God's helping him through his dietary problems, his passing his worms, to use a metaphor. And I had called him out and said, well, look, just tell me which way that Judas died, if you could resolve. And he goes, I'll get back to you on that one, Luke. And then that's when he called in the leverage that he thought he had on me, which was that as a fan of Ed Kowalczyk and the band Live during high school, and he had walked around saying, don't wear Live t-shirts to church, Luke. Live spelled backwards is evil. And I was like, God spelled backwards is dog. What are you getting at? But anyway, now science, as you think of application of scientific method, it was widely said by someone I worked for that science doesn't tell us what is true. The truth is defined as the true or actual facts of a case, but if you're a person who is on the quest for truth, it's good to give you, particularly if it comes to scientific truth, to know how to give the mind peace of mind and a break routinely, because you just mean true or actual facts of a case, and all your theories are amenable to being updated if you gain more or new facts of their and you could have two scientists in complete disagreement, and then the one who got famous is on his deathbed and 5 months off dying, and the other scientist finally comes forward and disproves his theory, and in that event there's supposed to be a gentleman's handshake, and they're out of a mutual respect for the method of scientific discovery more so than the results. The two scientists are supposed to shake hands and say, thank you for overturning my theory. That was my life's work, but you've advanced the frontiers of science. It's supposed to operate like that. But as far as the dynamics of, well, be true to yourself always. Once you've got a church teaching you, here's the right way to pray according to Jesus, and then they're telling you to pray this way of praying to Jesus while praying to Jesus. It's essentially a fucking. It's got to be a mockery. Intended to the congregation from. So it was wise for Annie to stand up to him. I just don't know why she didn't with more fervor and say, fuck you, more than she'd have earned everyone's respect, because she would just say, well, you were the one the other week reading, but when you pray, don't be as they do in the synagogues, speaking aloud in order to be heard by men, rather go and be alone, and your Lord, who hears you in silence, will reward you in secret. And that was all that she had to recite back to him, and then he'd go, oh yeah, so leading you all in public prayer to Jesus is something that would be done by a high cholesterol fat fuck of the new millennium. And I would say, hey. So the art I sent in the post to Melbourne, I really was just interested in asking, hey, does A and E's brain still work? B, would she would it work to the extent that she would have like philosophy conversations? And C, I hope does friendship mean more to her than Christian recruiting? Because if it doesn't, then I will cast my lot with the other detractors who had said, well, no, there's no point in being friends with her. She's gone off the deep end of making sense. And yeah, only to get kind of lambasted with a bunch of absurd, absurd on arrival statements. Alright, okay, you're so not on par with this. So the Christian mind knows what it is to be challenged and revelation. It just doesn't know. Well, it's debatable. Then there's I don't know. Christianity even knows plucking this scene from this piece of art. You know, to try and essentially help zealotize. Our Christian youth group well understood pinching scenes out of secular art to try and get across a Christian message. Now, if you were to have sent letters to the directors and the production staff of these non-Christian films saying, you know, we want to use injection scenes out of Train Spotting and Pulp Fiction for a Christian anti-drugs sermon that we're thinking of doing here in a few weeks. You know, do you think would you have even have bothered making a call back? Would they have called back and said, would you like it to sit down and talk about it over a nice hot cup of shut the fuck up? So, you know, I came to the conclusion that the concept of a uniting church Christian is an oxymoron. It's an oxymoron and there's that which, you know, can be presented before you and you can abhor, which is the content, literary content of the Bible, in that the whole rainbow and scope of every type of offense that can be is often for the most part called out by name, and there are mandates and permissions for these offences to occur, and for which whereby God has said certain things, like if you give the 50 shekels of silver to a virgin you just raped, you can buy her from her father. But because you've gone and, you know, because rape, they evidently had given some consideration to it being bad, but only to an extent. Because after all, the first woman was made for men's loneliness. The curative problem of man's loneliness. So there are other verses saying, no, if a woman doesn't scream out loud enough while being raped, she deserves to be stoned to death as an accessory to her own defilement, which is to say, like, you got yourself into this, you should have fucking screamed out louder. Now, because you didn't, like, fucking, you deserve to die too. Which, you know, so this verse is hardly accommodating to a scenario in which a woman might be bound or gagged or otherwise unable to speak. But these were the fast and Judge Judy speed anti-female manner in which women's rights were treated during the Old Testament of the Bible. Uh, yeah, and everyone keeps drawing this. Where I think Alan is going to have problems, and it's why I challenge. I say now, if you haven't even turned back and realized this one, even I cast my lot in the you must be, just you'll be a lesbian, happy lesbian for someone someday, but parade, and that's because going around saying this man of his own, this conquered citizen who was falsely accused, nonetheless of his own volition, went up that hill to die, thinking of you and all your assets and all your future goals, and while drafting a plan for your life at every turn. He had you on his mind and nothing more. That shows like no humility towards the dying. It shows no humility towards the suffering of mistreated. It shows an offset of consideration, and it shows, as long as you're sustaining the claim that Jesus as a physical person loved everyone, it shows unadulterated biphobia to the point where you would want a bisexual murdered rather than permit one to exist. And now that's where I wondered if, by way of appreciation for art, Alan, he would actually understand the challenge in Doppel as I saw it. But I only went on to learn she quite likely had more than sufficient former awareness of. So I copped a whammy of learning well. So the boss is what the boss is watching me fucking unwind and think about all this stuff. Then at work it's homosexual enslavement time. The owner's saying, "Be a good poof." I don't understand why he thinks in an official capacity where he's run a police check on me prior to working that he would ever even speak to me in that manner. But there are things I need to do to meditate for my sake of recovery, and my love of art is one of those things. If he's going to make a federal offense out of standing in front of a TV and deconstituting the memory of his bourgeois prejudice, plethora of pathetic vocabularies during work time, and I'm not even allowed to do that without prompting his survey. Then I realized the same thing about Freemasonry as with the church. It feels so obvious that you should be done away with to a Freemason, but it's again the failure to consider the historicity of the Gospels. So, if a Gospel said something that was more attuned to the Masonic agenda of 2021, but had been written in 750 Common Era, your church would do its best to say it was written in 20 of the Common Era, and was comprised of direct quotes from Jesus himself, where he's saying like, "I'm a martyr, I'm 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 a martyr, hey, hey, oh, I'm a martyr," and so I took the truth itself as going, well, if someone has stated to me that they're about certain principles, and then I see that it's well, if I see that it's a hook, they go, well, we represent. I'm quoting to you from the Pharmacist Code of Ethics and the Capital Chemist Mission Statement, so that you understand the formalities of what's outwardly represented. while knowing that deep down we wish for more sick people. A challenge was put to me by one pharmacist. He said, how many pharmacists are going to say, let's go home today, that I can't find a single sick person in all of Canberra? This is brilliant. How many people, how many pharmacists are going to call that the successful day, the day that no one got sick? Because in his view, such such character is essentially what a pharmacist is looking for. His own redundancy. I admired that. I admired that and saw it as less hypocritical than church. But you'll find that, that book is from the locums. Locums don't have things like, payment incentives contingent on favorable, in the eyes of upper management, fluctuations of rebates of certain prescriptions that are so high as to say, well, you're dispensing a high amount, enough amount of psych medications that the rebates are in the thousands per supply per patient, and you've earned yourself a stapler with the brand of a heart medicine logofied on the stapler itself, and a holiday and a computer supplied by the same Sanofi Ventus, the same drug manufacturing company. Hope you enjoy the holiday. Hope you enjoy the computer. Hope you enjoy the fucking stapler. But, the stories I would hear was that the two co-founders earn a percentage of the GNP for every store they set up, plus the managing pharmacist is paid their share. So it means that for every shop that's opened, Roger and Gary just keep getting paid. They get paid for the work done by the managing pharmacist that's plonked there. But now, who's free of those stresses? The locum. The locum just gets called going, well, there's no chemist to run the shop in Deakin today. Can you do it? And then on a few hours' notice, we'll go, yeah, I'll do the Deakin shift. And so they don't care about what group the chemist chain is. They don't care about the chain. They don't care about the location of the shop. All they know is that a pharmacist can't be there for whatever reason. They're not invested personally in the gross net profit of that shop. They have nothing but them and their training and their swag of morals to take with them. And they're the best type of pharmacists to ever work for. They're tremendously more honest, and many of them have additional postgrad degrees in other aspects of healthcare, such as dermatology, and sometimes they're sought for on the basis of their postgrad skills, because the sick approach going, I've got this shit on a hand, and then the locum will go, oh, I know how to make a cream for that. And then they'll run out the back and go, quick, I need 50 cc's of memetamorphoid stat. And then they'll come back and make a cream, and make them their own custom cream, hand it to them in a jar, and then the patient will come back the next day saying, tell that pharmacist from the other day that their work was excellent. I thought they were brilliant. But yeah, with no financial investment in the GNP of that particular store, there's no, they don't take on this prejudiced idea that, the more psychiatric medicine in circulation, the better it is for everyone here. That's a mood that can be grouped over people in capital chemist in a way that is not so subtle as to be felt by everyone, but just not explicated enough, because that's frustration for, Freemasons as I said, they think that their martyr has been essentially in a position where they're making money back out of stores where they're not working. It's like they're not catching their martyrs. So it's like putting out 30 coins and not getting someone abducted. So when they check in and go, well, where's my evidence trail of all this antipsychotic psych med being dispensed? Oh, you haven't been dispensing much. Well, then they'll lash the whip at the chemist who does run that store. And and that's why Gary Cairns wears stay-free sanitary pads, and during his monthly visitor, stay-free tampons. Thank you. Come again. Thank you. Come.